Hello, this is Bruce, and welcome to my tutorial on the Milviz 737-200, a nice little Boeing jet, often found flying around, or used to be in Alaska. This is for P3D version 4.5, and by the way, all the previous videos work fine in 4.5. This jet here wasn't available for a while, but I just realized that Milviz had upgraded it, or updated it, to permit it to fly more effectively in a P3D 4.5 environment, so I appreciate that. This is my own tutorial for myself. I'll try and keep it under 30 minutes. It'll go from a cold and dark condition up through taxi ready. Cruise speed is 500 and the Econ cruise is 430. Range is about 1,500 miles. Takeoff distance 6,200 feet. Landing distance 4,580. And the ceiling is 37,000. This plane does not have any derated engines. It also does not have auto throttle, and it does not have an FMS. So already you can tell it's meant to be dated in that respect. So this is the external view, obviously, and if you push Shift E, the main cabin door here forward will open. Nice animation. And then Shift E2 will open up the cargo doors. This is a combination aircraft, cargo in the front, passengers in the back, and as you can see, the windows are transparent. You can see inside. Those are the cargo containers exposed. Now if you hit Shift E3, that's what's going to bring out the stairs here and the stairs here, and they move very slowly, and the animation is actually pretty good. In fact, you'll see the railings pop up eventually. With the extension being completed, they'll now lift themselves up to the full extent, and seems to turn out real well. It also retracts very slowly, as we'll see in just a second. And then Shift E4 is very rapid. Everything on the right side opens up, including the cargo baggage holds. So we'll just reverse it here, Shift E4. And then we're going to hit Shift E3, and this happens very slowly, so don't be impatient. Shift E2 and Shift E, and away we go. Now this one's really slow, but what's happening is the railings are collapsing first downwards, and then it starts to fold up. It just takes a while, but let's go ahead and pop inside and save a little time. Here's the cold and dark condition. Not everything in the overhead, for instance, is set for this cold and dark condition. We'll see that in a second, but for the most part it's set up properly. Left click on the parking brake and then run up here to the overhead. And by the way, just as a little bit of background for those that are curious, I am on P3D version 4.5 using Active Sky Ultimate Traffic Live at 100% commercial in general. My NVIDIA card is a 1070, and my i5 is overclocked, and I'm using Chase Plane for the views that you're seeing now, just for those that would ask later on. So we're going to run through this briefly. I hopefully won't take too long. We're going to either close this battery switch lever, which will start the battery, or you can click that and then close it. Left click on the yaw damper, left click on the galley. Then we're going to go down and look at the standby power switch, which is covered. That's what you want to see. And to continue on down through, roll up down through here again, we'll see that the equipment cooling is on normal. The emergency exit lights are the covers down, which it should be. Left click, no smoking. Left click, fasten seatbelts. Notice the wipers are located at the bottom of the third column. You can, by the way, get ground power with a left click. See that jump the ACs. You can get ground power anytime the plane is parked. You don't need to worry about it, and unfortunately there is no external GPU that'll be evident to anybody. So there will be that missing piece, but you know, that's no big deal because we're inside anyway. And you just turn it off with a right click. I'll be starting the APUs shortly, so I'm not going to continue to worry about that. After the seatbelt signs and the no smoking signs are set to auto, then we're going to run up here to the left window heat and the right window heat. They say to turn these on 10 minutes before departure. What happens is if you have a bird strike in flight, the window won't be so stiff, it'll be a little pliable, and you'll be able to survive that strike much better, although this is a sim, so it's not going to happen, is it? Pitot static heat's on at this point. Now here's some of the stuff that shouldn't be on, but it is. The hydraulics are all on as the standard coding, I guess, for the cold and dark condition, as are all the fuel pumps. That's just wrong, but that's how it's set up, and I'm not going to bother changing them. These are electrically driven over here. These are engine driven, and that's why it says low pressure, because the engines aren't turning right now. So that's a little bit of that. Then we're going to go down the position light. We're going to right click it up to fixed. That'll turn on the left red and the right green wingtip lights to tell people that there's people in the cockpit and that activities are going on. The anti-collision light too is set to on at this point, and it should be off. I will do that because we'll come back to that in a minute, because we're not starting our engines yet and we're not moving, so I'm going to leave that alone for a minute. Over here, the flight ground switch, just left click it to ground. That means we're not pressurizing the cabin. We'll turn it to flight, or it'll automatically act as if it's turned to flight when we take off, and it'll start pressurizing. Won't want to do that till we're taxiing. Then down below here, just above the flap lever, is our transponder, and it's either off on standby, transponder mode, traffic advisory, or traffic advisory resolution advisory. Those are your options. If you have no, leave it on standby, but if there is radar tracking on the ground and they want to know where you are, you can put it on transponder. It doesn't send them altitude or anything, it just tells them where you are on the tarmac. And then TA if you want to see if there's any conflicting traffic as you're taxiing around, and don't put on the resolution until you're on the runway itself. And then here's the altitude reporting switch there. Mouse wheel can change these figures just by using the outer and inner rings, and that's probably all we need to know right now. The COM and nav are down here: COM 1, COM 2, nav 1, nav 2. COM's changed by just flipping this lever back and forth between the two, and you can change the figures just as you would expect on this. This is your ADF here. You can just dial it in. I see pop-ups coming through, like right now it's set at 1637, so that helps you interpret what this is saying. So that's a big help. And then what you'll do with these navs, if there's a distance DME associated with it, then you're going to find the answer to nav 1 is here. It says DME 1, that's your nav 1, and that darker circle there, that 0 at the end, is a decimal point, so it'd be 000.0. So if they're all ones across there, you're not 1111, it's 111.1. And then DME2 is over here, where you're not really going to see it, which is too bad, but that's where it is, and that would correspond to nav2 over here. And then just to look down briefly, here's your panel lights and floodlights. This you don't really need. That's only if you have runaway trim, and we're not going to have that happen. Sometimes the alarm test features don't work, seemingly. Some are just not coded, but you could use them if you want to try them. Some people are having trouble with it, I've noticed on some of the other videos that I've watched just to prepare for this one. They're only clicking with the left click. I'd suggest clicking with the right click, here's a left click, and the middle mouse click to see if any of that will work. Now right now we're not really up and running and things aren't moving yet. But try all three. I found that sometimes a left click will get it started and a middle mouse wheel click turns it back, which is a bit of a surprise. So I'll put that back on standby. And let's keep going here. Okay, the radar here, you've got test here, test, weather, turbulence, and map. I don't think it really matters what you put it on. It'll all be the weather as far as I can tell. And then these are ranges right here, which work. Your dim does also work, and bright. And then if you want to look up, you go up, and if you want to look down, you go down, like so. And that's mostly for TCAS. For takeoff, you want to look higher than your airplane, and if you're descending, you want to look below it. But the TCAS, as far as I know, doesn't work. I haven't seen it work yet. If it does, let me know. But for right now, I'm not convinced that it does. I could be wrong, but so far, not. And then, well, let's look then at this section of panels right here on the glare shield, and let's tug it in. This is the auto, oops, didn't want to stay. Well, it may not. But this is what they call the autopilot in this middle feature here. This is a shared common plate for the co-pilot and the pilot. The co-pilot has an identical rectangular section here as I do over here. And there is a difference. Now, when you look at this rectangle here, this is only working with the flight director and this instrument right here, and the same for the co-pilots. That's why they can be done differently. So they're affecting these two items. Those are strictly for visual aids. Although you want to put the pitch command to the max up position before you take off, which I've just done. The Alt, I don't think really does much. You can leave it on if you want to. But these settings include go around, off, heading, VOR localizer, auto approach, and manual glide slope. Manual glide slope is simply a more exacting instrument where you can even intercept a glide slope from above. It's just got more oomph to it, I guess you could say. But you'd want to use the auto approach almost 99% of the time. I can't imagine trying to get to the glide slope from above. And so these are duplicates, and then this middle rectangular section is what they would call the autopilot, and I'll be going over that here in just a minute. The one thing I will say right now is that if you're using Flight 1's GTN 750 or 650 or something like that, and you can get it to put it on GPS, then you can put this on VOR LOC, VOR lock, or loc. Anyway, you put it on the VOR LOC, and it will guide it on the GPS, which is like hitting the nav button on some other aircraft, which is fantastic. So VOR localizer. There goes the brain freeze finally. Okay, good. Let's go back up here again, and we're going to get the APU turned on, the auxiliary power unit. First of all, we want to make sure the left aft fuel pump is on. It is. If we're going to run it for a long time, we'd want to use the left center if there's at least 1,000 in that tank. Right now all the tanks are full. The APU switch is down here just to the left of the engine switches, to the right of the taxi light, and it needs 2 left switches to go down to start, and then it'll automatically pop back to on, and this is the world's fastest GPU ever right there. I'm going to hear you just turn the sound on for a second. Okay, I've got the sound off because with that much noise you really can't hear me, but I just wanted you to hear at least that much. Then when this blue light comes on, you can left click the APU generators and then go over here and do the APU bleed and left pack. Now you don't have to turn on the right pack from what I've read, but I just do both. Turn on the Gasper switch fan here so that the passengers can use those little air ports above their heads to get some air onto their heads, and then I like to just turn on the engine bleeds as well, because that'll come in handy, and then leave the isolation valve on auto. It'll handle all the fine adjustments that's needed there. Okay, then let's look down to the doors section. This piece right here, when they're dark like this, tells us that all the doors are closed. If I was to open up the forward entry door, for instance, it'll turn yellow like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and close that same door, and it goes out. So that's just a nice little check. Make sure your doors are closed. Cabin pressure business, it's all down in this area here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more if I can get it to cooperate. There we go. The altitude that I've selected is 32,000 feet. This runs in 500 increments. The landing altitude that I've looked ahead and found is 2385 for Spokane. So I'm going to hit 2385. This doesn't go in terms of fives, but it will go in tens. So I might just go 2380. I don't have to do the cabin altitude because I've got this set to auto. If I wanted to do it manually, I could switch this over to manual, and then look at this chart here. At 32,000 feet, I need 6,000, and that's of course what it's already preset because it's on auto. So you just look up the altitude, look up where the cabin pressure is supposed to be, cabin altitude, and you've got it made. So I think that's a very handy little tool. Comes in pretty sweet if you want to do it with the long way. Okay, then we would push back at that point, and then after we've pushed back, let's just straighten up the picture here. After we've pushed back, then we're going to turn on the anti-collision light, although I think that actually should be done for the pushback part to let people know we're moving, and then get the engine started. And by the way, this has a 3-position off, retracted, and on. When it's in the retracted position, the red anti-collision light on the belly of the aircraft withdraws or retracts into the body of the aircraft, because in some airports up in Alaska and other places there can be debris on the runway, and these things can break from those sorts of things. So in those settings, retraction is good. But when you put it on, then both the red anti-collision light on top and beneath are on, so that helps. Okay, and then we've got the fuel pumps on already. We've got the packs off. We're going to make sure the hydraulics are on. They are. Gravel protection switch as needed. It just sort of narrows the scope of the air intake and stuff, so we're not going to suck gravel and ruin the engine. Fuel heat if it's below freezing, here and here. And also to start the engines, we need the start cover not only up, but left clicked to the on position. Then we're going to start with engine number 1, and we're going to click it over with a left click to ground. And then we're going to quickly look down here, and what we're going to follow is we're going to follow your percents RPMs right here, your N2, and it's going to run up to 20. There's N2 listed right there. When it gets to 20, the book says 22, or the paperwork, of which there's a lot. You get to 22, you can hit then and open up the fuel cutoff levers to idle. I do it when it hits 20 because it won't fire up until it hits 20, and 22 is just a little extra margin that I don't think is necessary. So we're going to click left there. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the sound. It's going to hit 20, right about there. Alright, so engine 1 is up. This click to off. We'll do the same thing with number 2. We're going to watch now the second gauge, and when it gets to 20, engine cutoff, fuel cutoff valve, and we'll flip them to idle and the engine will start. There we go. Perfect. That's great. Turn off the last precaution light. Wonderful. Okay, I'll kick out the noise again so I can communicate. Now we're going to go ahead and close the start valve arming. We're going to go ahead and turn on the generators here for the engines 1 and 2. Turn off the APU's generators. Turn off the APU bleed. Turn on the left pack and the right pack, and then we're going to turn off the APU itself. And you can see it just quickly drops to 0. That's unrealistic, but hey, you know, time is money, right? So we'll kick it through. All right, so the isolation valve, we've left that alone on auto. We're going to now kick this over to flight with a left click. And the engine switches automatically go to off. We can use our other lights now. We can set, I don't know, oscillation and strobes and stuff, wings, wheels. I don't know about the position. Some people might choose fixed. I like to get all the attention I can get, so I want it strobing and stuff. Then we're going to taxi on. You don't need the runway turn-off lights unless it's dark, because I can see everything. It's still daylight out there. But this would be a 45-degree lit lamp that shoots out so I can see turn-offs and things like this, and runway turn-offs. And then when I'm up on the runway, turn off the taxi and hit the left and right inboard landing lights. So that's there to do when I get to that point. The altimeter then now can be set. I just use the B to, here it is right here. You can set these things manually or just hit B and it adjusts the current altimeter. I do know that I'll be taking off on runway 28, so I'm just going to run my heading bug over there to 28 ahead of time and then fine tune it when I get closer. The altimeter, I'm going to put it up to whatever the ATC would tell me to do, but just for demo, I'm putting it up to 32,000. There we go. Oops. It moves quickly after a little bit of time. There we go. It does not, now here's the kicker. This plane, you do fly it. You're not reliant upon it leveling off at 32,000 based on anything you set here. In fact, when you get to 32,000, you have to right click to alt hold or use your mouse wheel, and then it will hold that altitude. If it's really turbulent, click it onto turbulence and it'll hold even more strictly that altitude. It just is a more exacting feature. So just to let you know, you got to fly this puppy. You just can't ignore it. Flaps then for takeoff would be set to 5, and this here tells you that they're at 5 right now. Oops, went a little bit too far. Look at that. Oops, handy dandy. There we go. And we'll kick it back to 5. There we go. Then down here you can see the flap lever right there. This is your speed brake. This is your trim. We'll want to get it a little bit more in the mid-range for the trim wheel. We've got it on takeoff mode. There's climb, there's cruise, and there's go around. Takeoff, see this gauge right there? I'm going to zoom into it just real quick so you can see it more clearly. It's TO is for takeoff. Watch what happens when I switch it to, say, climb. Now it says climb. And then this is nice. This has got the temperature already there automatically supplied. climb, and now max EPR is 198. That's these two figures, these dials right here. You can, and there's the 198, and there's the mark. So if I were to put it back on takeoff, now it's 210, and these have automatically jumped to 210. What that tells you is when you're throttling up, don't let that needle go past that mark. And that's a good safe place to stay, no matter what modality you're in. So that's very helpful. Okay. Then we'll want to set flaps 5 common NAVs frequencies. Well, we want to make sure those are set, of course, and we've got all those down there as described. The ADF, the DMEs, the trims are set, the auto brake is off. Now, here's your auto brake right there. You'll notice there is no RTO. For landing, we'll want it on medium at least, but for takeoff, it just says in up, and that's where we want to leave it. Notice the placard here as well. That can be helpful sometimes. So we've got that covered. Transponder depends upon what we need it for, and we've discussed that. The speed bugs are over here, and your speed indicator. And these are draggable like this. I'm just left clicking and dragging this with my mouse. Let's say, for example, and this is all in the lit, you can find it in the paperwork, all these figures, but if you had a 130,000 pound aircraft and flaps 5 for takeoff, the V1 is 149, the VR is 152, the V2 is 156, and the V2 plus 15 or plus 25, depending upon what you want, is 171 or 181. So the way this is set up is you do V1 first, which is 149. So we'll just creep that up there like that. And then the second one is the 152 VR. And then the third one is 156, almost in the same spot. So we're just boom, boom, boom for V2. And then 171. Now notice how that's dragging way behind me, so don't be shocked if that's the case. There's the 171. So V1, rotate, V2, and then the climb out speed. So those are all listed. The minimum descent altitude is over here. It is adjustable, but I can't think of any reason why you'd want to fiddle with it. This is also your radio magnetic indicator, and it goes up to 2,500 feet. So you can use that if you like. I'm going to see what's next here. The weather radar, of course, you'd want to choose the modality that you'd like to instrument. Yeah, it's too far away. I'll keep it down to 20 and put it on map, but you'll see it's just the same stuff that's coming through. It's just the weather, no matter what mode you choose. There is no RTO, as I mentioned. Taxiing now, and then before takeoff, we'll get the taxi lights off, the runway lights on, the runway turn-off lights off if they were on. The position light is up, strobe and steady. De-icing is needed. I don't think there's any de-icing switches in this aircraft that are modeled. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen them. Fuel heat's off always. Transponder, TARA, right in here. So you'd flip that over to the TARA position when you're on the runway. The weather radar then is on. Now the flight director, what you'll need to have the flight director set to is you'll want to turn this to the heading. So we'll do that for the co-pilot as well. The rest of it is set up properly. We'll leave it on manual, and we'll take off. We won't do anything with this until the flaps are up and the gear is up and we've got some stable flight. Then we can go ahead and engage one of these two. This one is for ailerons. The aileron feature will hold the bank angle. If you were banking less than 5, I believe it levels the wings out. More than 5, it'll hold on to that and kick off your heading mode too when that happens. And then here is your elevator. It'll hold your attitude or your pitch, whether you're climbing or descending. And also there's control wheel steering, which means that even if these two are on, if I input controls with the wheel or with the yoke, whatever, I'm going to be affecting the attitude of the aircraft and as well as the bank. And it will hold those if I exceed a certain degree of pressure back forward or whatever. It will then assume that that is the new attitude and bank that I want, and it'll turn accordingly or climb accordingly or descend, of course. Or you can turn it off, set your attitude the way you want it, turn it on, it'll hold that. Same thing for this. I sometimes use that more than the other, just as a matter of course. Okay, takeoff then is full throttle. You go through your V speeds, gear up when you got stable climbing, And then you got your initial speeds, as I mentioned. If you're taking off with flaps 5, retract to flaps 1 at V2 plus 15, and then no flaps when you hit 190. And then just watch your limits here as you continue to climb. And then, of course, after your gear is up, you can go ahead and click this back to off, because it'll be up here. You can click it back to the center position. No harm done. Remember to watch your airspeed. There is no auto throttle. There is no FMS. It's really much more of a pilot hands-on aircraft. You'll climb at about 1,800 feet per minute, and then as you get it all cleaned up, flaps, gear, then you can go ahead and stick it on manual. As I said, make sure it's still on manual, and then if you click this one, right click or left click right here, the heading switch, when this is in the middle, it keeps the heading it's on. It doesn't matter at that point what you've got down here as a heading. What matters is where the aircraft was heading when you put it in the middle. It'll keep doing that direction, keep going that direction. Now in flight, if you left click it again, it'll stay down. I'm holding the mouse button to make it stay down, but it'll look like this in flight. And it then takes its cues. Oh, look at that, they're up, it's staying down. Good to know. It'll then take its cues from here. So just to tell you, that's the difference. And then if you click these off, it flips back to the middle to hold the heading that it was on at that moment for you. So there's a little help there. The VOR lock, again, right click this. If it's on this position, and you can follow it over here if you want to, VOR localizer plus GPS setting on the F1 GTN 750, or if you can get it to do it on the Garmin, that will hold the GPS course for you and fly autopilot in that respect. And then, of course, when you're coming in to land and you want to catch an ILS, you'll go auto approach. And then if you're needing a more specific, carefully managed ILS, or you're too high and you want to try and capture it from above, you can try the manual glide slope like that. And I've already explained the altitude hold, so that should keep us out of trouble. There is no other systems here but B, so no worries there. So again, if the autopilot is, if this heading is off and they right clicked it to the up position, that means that the direction is only controlled by me, by my steering it myself manually. If it's in the middle and these two are up, then the aircraft holds its current heading. And even if these are down, in fact, it goes to the middle when these two are dropped down after being up on. And then if I push it to the bottom, then it's driving or steering, directing it by this heading here. So that's good. And I think that's pretty much all there is to it. Then in cruising, of course, just watch your fuel loads. When the low pressure indicators come on the tanks up above in the overhead, just turn off those fuel pumps accordingly. Now descent, I want to mention just two things that come to mind. One is this plane does not slow down. You can take the power clear off and it will not slow down in any degree. It's like grease lightning up there. So I use the speed brakes pretty liberally. It's the only way I can think of to get the thing to slow down without having to climb and to get it down to flaps speed. So you'll find that that's a very helpful thing to remember. Rates of descent about 1,500 feet a minute. You can set your speed bugs over here, just as I did for takeoff with VREF and VREF plus 15 and all that. Now how do you find your VREF? This is the fun part. I like this. This little gauge here shows you your zero fuel weight and your total pounds of fuel. If you right click this, 5 degrees of flaps, 10 degrees of flaps, 15, 30, and 40. If I'm going to land at 30 degrees of flap at this current situation weight-wise, it tells me that my VREF is 132. That's a great, quick way to know. And here's some more nice placard information there. So take advantage of that. I think that's a really handy, snappy, quick tool to use. And I appreciate that one very much. Other than that, I think we're good. You just want to adjust all your tools as you're coming down. Set your speed brake to 2 on your final approach. Arm your speed brake with the shift backslash. And yeah, the rest should be self-explanatory. I hope that helps. Thanks so much for watching. I might have missed a few things. In fact, I'm almost positive I usually do. But comments are always appreciated. Note all the little light switches as well, here and there, just to acclimatize. They're awful handy. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Have a great time. Enjoy your day. Take care. Bye-bye.